I don't really know why I decided to tell this story now. Maybe it's because silence weighs more when you get older, or maybe because I've spent most of my life not being understood, and it feels like time is finally giving me permission to speak. My name doesn't matter much. What matters is that I'm 60 years old now, and for most of my life people said I was broken. Strange, slow, wrong. That word, wrong, used to echo in my head like church bells. I didn't speak much as a child. I remember sounds more than words. The ticking of the clock in our kitchen, the hum of my mother's sewing machine, the sound of my father's boots on the wooden floor. That one always made me flinch. I didn't look people in the eye, and I never liked being touched. Bright lights hurt, loud noises hurt, and when I tried to explain that something felt wrong, people said I was spoiled. It was the early 1970s, and no one talked about autism back then. Not in our small town, anyway. Children like me were difficult, strange, or defective. My father preferred the word embarrassment. He was a proud man, worked in a factory, came home smelling like oil and sweat. He liked things quiet, his dinner hot, and his wife obedient. He didn't like me. I don't think he ever tried to. My mother, she was different. Soft voice, tired eyes. She always said, "He just needs more time." She believed I wasn't broken, just different. But she never said that when he was around. When my father shouted, she'd shrink into herself, wringing her hands like she could twist fear into courage. He told her I was her fault, said she babied me too much, that she made me this way. He'd point at me, shaking, rocking, covering my ears, and yell, "You see what you've done? You made him useless." She never yelled back. She just waited for the storm to pass. I learned early that silence was safer than speaking. I'd hide under the kitchen table and line up my toy cars, perfectly straight, until his boots came into view. Then I'd freeze. That sound of the heavy stomp of his anger still echoes in my bones. When I was 8, my father took me to a doctor. I remember the smell of the office, alcohol and cold metal. The doctor asked me questions I couldn't answer. He tapped my knee with a hammer, shined a light in my eyes. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The light burned. The ticking clock was too loud. The doctor sighed and said, "Maybe he's mentally retarded. Maybe he needs discipline." My father liked that word, discipline. It made him feel right. Things got worse after that. I was punished for things I didn't understand. If I forgot to say hello, if I didn't answer fast enough, if I covered my ears when the radio was too loud, the belt came out. And through all of it, my mother whispered apologies I didn't understand at the time. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry." Her hands shook when she touched me, but she still tried. She was the only person who tried. Then one day, my father said he'd had enough. I was 10. He came home with a folded piece of paper, a brochure. It had pictures of a building that looked like a hospital. He told my mother, "They'll fix him there." She cried. He didn't. A week later, I was sitting in the back seat of his car. He didn't speak during the drive. The road was long, lined with trees that blurred into each other. We stopped in front of a tall grey building, with bars on the windows. A sign out front said, "St. Mary's Psychiatric Facility." I thought maybe we were visiting someone, but then he said, "You'll stay here until you're better." I remember the sound of the door locking behind me. It's the kind of sound you never forget, a click that separates your life into before and after. Inside, everything smelled of bleach and loneliness. The walls were grey, the lights hummed, people screamed sometimes, others just stared at the floor, rocking back and forth like I did. But there was no kindness there, only control, only rules. I didn't know how long I stayed. Time didn't mean much. Days were the same. Breakfast at 7, medication at 8, silence or punishment. I learned to stop crying because crying made them angry. Once, I tried to tell one of the nurses that the noise hurt, that I just needed quiet. She slapped me, said, "You stop that nonsense right now." I learned something important there. Pain wasn't always physical. Sometimes it was being misunderstood so deeply that you start believing maybe they're right. Maybe you really are broken. I used to dream of my mother coming to get me. In the dreams, she'd open the door and whisper, "It's over. You can come home now." But mornings always came, and she wasn't there. Then, one day, she was. I must have been 13. I remember hearing her voice echo down the hallway, arguing with someone. When I turned the corner, I saw her hair tied back, eyes wild, her hands clutching papers like they were weapons. She shouted, "You can't keep him here. I'm his mother." And for the first time in years, I saw fear in the staff's eyes, not mine. She had fought for me somehow, through lawyers or mercy or luck. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that she had come. That night, we left in the dark. She didn't tell my father. She just grabbed my hand and said, "We have to go before he finds out." We got on a bus that smelled of diesel and rain. I remember her trembling, holding me close, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. You're safe." It was the first time anyone had ever said those words to me, and I believed her. The bus took us far away from everything I knew. The lights of the city disappeared behind the rain, and for the first time in years, I wasn't surrounded by walls. I didn't know where we were going, but my mother kept saying, "It doesn't matter. We'll start over." We ended up in a small town 2 states away. She found a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a leaky sink. We didn't have much, just what we could carry. But to me, it was freedom. At first, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me flinch, a creak in the floor, the pipes groaning at night, the wind through the window. She'd come into my room and sit by the bed, singing softly until my breathing slowed. Sometimes, she'd fall asleep sitting there. I didn't understand everything she said back then, but I understood the way her hands never hurt me. Her voice never shouted. Her eyes never looked through me. That was enough. Over time, she started teaching me small things. How to make toast without burning it. How to cross the street when the light turned green. How to use words when my body wanted to hide. She didn't force me to change. She helped me find a way to live in a world that didn't understand me. When I got overwhelmed, she'd whisper, "Breathe, sweetheart. The world isn't against you, it's just loud." We had routines, and routines made me feel safe. We'd wake up, eat breakfast together. Then she'd go clean houses for work. When she came home, she'd tell me stories about the people she met. Sometimes I didn't respond, but she never made me feel guilty for being quiet. When I was 16, she found a woman named Mrs. Collins, a retired teacher who had read about children like me in medical journals. She said, "He's not broken. He just processes differently." It was the first time anyone had said something that made sense. Mrs. Collins started teaching me how to recognize patterns in speech, how to read expressions without panic, how to write letters when talking felt impossible. She showed me that communication didn't have to mean words. Sometimes it was gestures, drawings, or silence that spoke loudest. Those years were hard, but they were also the years. I became me. I never saw my father again. My mother told me he tried to find us once, but she made sure he never did. Sometimes I wondered if he ever regretted what he did, leaving me in that place. But I learned to stop asking questions that hurt more than they heal. In my 20s, I got a job fixing radios. Machines made sense to me. They were predictable, logical. If something didn't work, there was always a reason. Humans weren't like that, but still, I tried. I learned to live alone. I paid my bills, cooked my meals, and every Sunday, I'd visit my mother. We'd sit together in silence, drinking tea, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. For most people, silence is awkward. For us, it was love. She got older, of course. Her hair turned white, her steps slower, but she still smiled the same way. That soft smile that told me I was enough. One afternoon, when I was 45, she sat me down and said, "I won't be here forever, sweetheart, but you'll be okay. I know you will." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. I just held her hand, and for the first time, she didn't tell me to let go. A year later, she was gone. Her heart stopped in her sleep. They called me from the hospital, and I remember sitting in the kitchen, staring at the wall for hours. There was no sound, not even the hum of the fridge that day. Grief felt like the clinic, like walls closing in, like the world suddenly too loud again. I didn't speak to anyone for weeks, but one night I found her old scarf hanging on the back of a chair. It still smelled like her, soap and lavender. I wrapped it around my shoulders, and for the first time since she died, I said the words out loud, "Thank you, Mom." That was the night I started writing things down. I wrote about her laugh, about the clinic, about the sound of rain on the bus window the night we ran away. I wrote about being different, and how different doesn't mean wrong. And when the pages filled up, I realized I wasn't writing for me anymore. I was writing for others like me, people who grew up misunderstood, people who still think they're broken because someone told them they were. I never became famous. I never got married, but I built a life that made sense to me. I fixed things. Radios, clocks, old cameras. People bring me objects that don't work, and I find a way to make them whole again. Sometimes I think that's what my mother did for me. She fixed me, not by changing who I was, but by believing I didn't need to be fixed. Now at 60, my world is quiet. I still wake up early. I make tea. I sit by the window and listen to the sound of morning birds. They remind me of her humming while she cooked. I don't hate my father anymore. I used to. For a long time, hate was the only way I knew how to protect myself. But now, I just feel sorry for him. He didn't know any better. He was raised to believe that men don't cry, that silence means strength, that tenderness is weakness, and maybe that's why he broke everything he touched. If he were alive, I think I'd tell him that I turned out okay. Not fixed, just fine, and that the world he never understood finally learned the word he couldn't find for me, autistic. Some people still whisper that word like it's a disease, but to me, it's a name that finally makes sense. It means I feel the world in ways others can't. It means I notice things. The rhythm of rain on the roof, the tiny flicker of dust in sunlight, the sound of my own heartbeat when everything else goes quiet. I used to think being different meant being alone, but I've learned that being different means being able to see beauty where others don't. And maybe that's enough. Sometimes families still write to me. Mothers who are scared, fathers who don't understand, kids who feel trapped in their own silence. They ask, "What should we do?" And I always say the same thing. Listen, even when it's quiet, listen. Because silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes silence is where love hides. I still talk to my mother, not with words. She wouldn't need them anyway. I talk to her when I fix things, when I make tea, when I sit in the garden and watch the sun go down. And sometimes I swear I can still hear her whisper soft and steady, "You're safe now." And I am. After 60 years, I am finally safe.